explain, first of all, what a lot of people think about when we hear the word gray divorce. Sounds like a derogatory term to me, but nonetheless, we are seeing many couples consider divorce after the age of 50. I see that in people in their 60s. I have couples in their 70s and even into their 80s. And people wonder, why in the world would you marry someone and be married for 20 or 30 or 40 years and then decide to get a divorce? And I think the reasons are varied, but yeah, I do see a trend that after our kids leave home, we think that maybe things will change after the kids are gone. Maybe we've stayed with our spouse because we were actually trying to protect the children. Maybe there was some abuse or some certain behaviors that we felt like we needed to protect our children, and we stayed for that reason. I think sometimes people wonder if we went to counseling, maybe we could fix this. And they they maybe go to 2 or 3 sessions, then they quit, or their spouse says, I don't want to go anymore because I don't like what that counselor said, or I feel like the bad guy or the bad girl. So there are more and more couples, I believe, who are considering and going through divorce in their later years. Now, another reason could be that in years gone by, we didn't live as long. So even though people weren't divorcing, they were dying. So marriages weren't 50 and 60 years long. And now we are living longer. So could it be perhaps that we're actually with that person longer than we ever imagined? And we're saying, I can't do this anymore because we're finding that we're with them longer. I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever know the answer to that, but suffice it to say, there is a variety of reasons that people are considering divorce. Maybe lack of communication between the parties, which I think is big. Money issues, but we talk about infidelity in terms of not honoring your relationship with your spouse, but there's a thing called financial infidelity where one spouse is controlling the money or spending the money or not assisting the other spouse with the financial contributions. There's alcoholism, there's verbal abuse, there's physical abuse, there's drug addiction, there's just plain not paying attention to the other person, laziness and not helping raise the children or their chores. And I think those things quite honestly wear on one or the other party over the years. And they say, I could put up with this for 5 years. I could put up with this for 10 years. I maybe could put up with this while our kids grow up, but I'm not putting up with it anymore. And I think what happens is people get to be 50, 55, 60, and they say, my life isn't over. I'm likely to live a longer life. Maybe I'll live to be in my 80s. And they're, doing the calculations saying, I might have a good 15 or 20 years, and I just don't want to live like this anymore. And in one way, it's really sad to think that someone would be married and that we make a commitment for life and that we raise children together and we think we'll be together forever, retire, the visions of the white picket fence and the grandkids and, our life of retiring. And then we realize it's probably not going to happen. And we think maybe now is the time. Maybe now is the time that I can make a clean break and I can still be okay. And she or he can still be okay too. Well, the issues that come up in most divorces are, first of all, emotional, because this is an emotional experience for everyone. No one goes through divorce just smoothly and says, oh, it's no big deal. People can say, oh, we're going our separate ways, or we've come to an agreement, but we don't come to that place of understanding and accepting without all the phases typically of grief. It's a loss. A divorce is a death. So it's a loss of that relationship and knowing that that relationship is over causes, a lot of internal struggles. So lots of times there's counseling associated with that. There's arguments, there's distrust, there's frustration, there's anger. And so there's that part. And then there's the financials. The longer you've been together, likely, hopefully, the more you two have accumulated together in terms of assets. So we're going to do our work to see what have we accumulated, what does it look like. We're going to do, there's legal documents that have to be drawn up. And in mediation, we work on collectively as the couple with the mediator, we work on what works for all of us, what works for the wife, what works for the husband, and what works for the family. Now, they might have a young family, they might still have children that are minors, or they might have teenagers. They might have in their children in their 20s or 30s or 40s and grandchildren. But nonetheless, we have to remember they're always going to be a family. They are still going to be a mother and a father. And if they've had children, there are extended family members who will be affected by this, whether they live in the home or not. So I try to help a couple consider that, because how you go through this process is how you're going to be prepared to live the rest of your life, whether it's a relationship, whether it's your work relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship, whether it's a relationship with your family, or the new relationship you're going to have with your existing spouse, because there will be some kind of relationship. You just have to figure out what that will be. And I think that mediation offers you that opportunity to create that relationship and have it be different than maybe what it has been. Sometimes we're better friends afterwards. Sometimes, we're the best of friends, and we get to enjoy that friendship, and we get to enjoy the raising of our kids and our grandkids beyond that. Now, again, that's a choice. Everybody doesn't have to do that, but the beauty of mediation is you can do that. And we do it in a way that allows everybody to have input, share their thoughts and ideas, wrestle with it, think about it, not have to make a decision in any given day about anything. There are a lot of issues because it costs more to live in two separate places than it does one. We've accumulated typically a lot more goods. There's a lot of things to do and to divide. Oftentimes there are health considerations, or maybe one is in not so good health, and we're looking at things like health insurance, and is someone going to lose health insurance? In those cases, I actually have couples who say, I don't think I want to get a divorce, but I want to split everything. And in the state of Florida, there's no such thing as a legal separation. So oftentimes those couples consider doing what we call a post-nuptial agreement, where we help them divide and live separate lives, but it's not a legal divorce and it's not a legal separation. So that's something to consider. But yes, absolutely, we have not just the division of assets, but oftentimes if a couple is already retired, now we have an income that's probably going to stay steady based on withdrawals from retirement accounts and investment accounts, Social Security, or pensions. So the financial process it's very important in any divorce, but it is different with people in the retirement years, how they consider that. So, and then beyond that, we have things that we look at much like estate planning. What about wills, trusts, powers of attorney, healthcare surrogates, pre-need guardianship? All those things are things that every couple should have done as a couple. And now at the time of divorce, many people don't understand that those documents that have been prepared in advance, once the divorce becomes final, those documents are null and void. So people need to prepare new documents, a new trust, a new will, and they're not thinking about that. They're just thinking, I want to get out of this relationship. And I help them work through those kinds of things, to think through, what do we need to do? Much like we have had a joint account as a couple, and now we're going to split that account. And maybe someone doesn't think, well, I have my own account now, and I have my own checking account, and I have $30,000 in that checking account. And I never thought about the fact that if something happens to me, who can get to that money? Like, who gets to that money? And you might not, it might not be wise to have a joint account with somebody. Maybe you have a child who's not responsible and you don't want to make them a co-signer on that account. But there's other things that you can do to make sure that in the event, or I shouldn't even say in the event, when you pass, because it happens to us all, no one gets out alive, is that someone is assigned to receive that money upon the death of that person. And those are all planning techniques that we use so that people don't get caught in that place of not having been prepared, because we don't plan to fail, we fail to plan. Well, I personally feel like couples where if there is any domestic violence, if there's any child abuse, I absolutely believe that those cases should be in a courtroom. You should have attorneys representing you, especially if there's been any kind of domestic violence. You're not going to want to be comfortable in the same room. In the mediation style that I use, couples are typically in the same room with me, and I'm working with both of them. And I do that because we will make more progress. I want you to create a new and different relationship. I want you to have the opportunity to communicate with one another honestly and openly. And if you're in separate rooms, which we call a caucus, you lose the opportunity to do that. So I always encourage that, but I separate people where we need to, where it's appropriate. Sometimes there's a case where one party is not disclosing all of the information to the other party. So in financial matters, let's just say, there's businesses that are involved and maybe other properties and there are investments that are made, and maybe everything has not been disclosed in the past. And one party is saying, he or she has done this and does this, and, they've, been forging my name on tax returns. I've never seen any of the banking information. If all the parties are willing to disclose in the mediation process these documents, then we can handle all of that. But in cases where someone just simply is not willing to, then in that case you really need an attorney, because an attorney is going to be able to subpoena those documents. In other words, make a formal request in the court, and those documents will have to be delivered as a matter of law. So in cases like that, someone really needs to have an attorney.